Morning, Year 10. Welcome to episode. What are we up to now, sir? What episode is this one?
How am I supposed to keep track? It's your class.
Episode, I don't know,
Get on with it,
5 or 6
It's not Chong's job to organise this.
Cheech and Chong.
Yes, the next Cheech and Chong episode.
Going to keep talking about Vietnam as we do. And we've got a special guest today, guys. We've got this bloke here, Paul Rigby, okay? Famous cartoonist. You can see that D-Max described him really well. Famous for drawing beefy Aussie blokes and busty blonde Sheilas. Great alliteration there, by the way. Yeah. In crowded pubs or frenetic racetracks. Now, what's Urchin Boy? His signature was Urchin Boy with a small dog.
If you look down the bottom where he's sitting,
there he is.
It says, "I love WA."
That was Urchin Boy. Where's his dog then?
I don't know. Maybe he ate it.
Oh, I thought Urchin Boy was like this little sea urchin thing.
No.
How is that Urchin Boy? That's his name, is it? Urchin Boy?
Yeah, he was an urchin. He had no mummy, he had no daddy.
An orphan?
Your kids are going to be in a minute if you don't behave yourself.
Okay, Rigby, let me move this out of the way. Sympathetic for the Australian soldier, caught between the peace activists and the politicians. So he's your classic supporter of the soldiers, you know what I mean? Support the boys in Vietnam.
He loves the boys in Vietnam.
Loves the boys.
But a couple of things about him. You'll see that he starts to change his view in accordance with the times. He was really loved by the Australian public in the sense that, betraying my age here, but if you wanted to get an interesting view of anything, you would open up and you'd always look for the Rigby cartoon.
Yeah, okay.
And it'd always be good value, it had something to say.
Yeah.
It's pretty sharp little cookie.
Yeah, he looks pretty sharp there. So does Urchin Boy. He was very sharp down there. He's wearing Ugg boots too. All right. Our first here are our cartoons. Okay. So you got your big, beefy, burly blokes, the soldiers there. Sorry, it just frozen me then. All right. So, Mum, where'd you spring from? Here's our SOS. Not save our schooners, but save our sons, sir. Remember? They get confused with Frank and Herb. Okay. Well, what's she doing here on the plane?
Well, if you have a bit of a look at them, guys, you'll see that he wasn't a really savage cartoonist, but he did feel things quite strongly. And if you look, that's really the first cartoonist one is, there's your mum from the SOS. You certainly don't want to run into her in a dark alley or anywhere near Woolies behind a trolley. But she comes onto the plane and there's her son going off to Vietnam and she's out to save them. It's kind of a light-hearted, people sort of had a bit of a laugh at the SOS during that period, but you can see Rigby's a little bit cynical about them. He thinks that they're a little bit of a joke.
Yeah, but these ones here, they look a bit more serious, These looks like they're university students supporting the Viet Cong here, and the soldiers are something to say to them, and also the wharfies here as well.
Okay, this comes from that militant period. So the one before that is the grassroots period.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Right. You're listening to these protests, they're a bit funny and so on. He tries to find the humorous side of them. Here we're getting a bit more serious. Australians are really disgusted by the activity of a lot of the anti-war movement.
Yep.
So the university students here who are raising money for the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
And the Australian soldier who's just returned says, well, you better start praying that the VC, the Viet Cong, send back some help, sonny, because you're about ready to get pummeled.
Yeah.
You're going down. Equally up the top, you can see about the wharfies. They've been blocking goods and mail going to Vietnam. And the same soldier now come back from Vietnam, typical Rigby, beefy Aussie bloke, comes up. And the scraggy little unionists there, they've got their little placards and they've been blocking stuff. Well, I got a few personal messages from the fellows up there. Who's going to be first, mate?
So they're going to war for Wharfie. That's what they're going to do, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's really a part of it. So you can see he's sort of light-humoured during the time of the grassroots movements, but then we're starting to get more towards disgust at the militant activities. But by the time we get to the moratorium, you see that Rigby is really starting to question things.
This is 1969, I'm guessing, and the moon landing.
Absolutely, and he's referring to that, and he says, the step's the same on the moon or on a mine. There's Neil Armstrong. He gets down and he says, "That's one small step for a man, but one giant leap for mankind." This is slightly more cynical. Yeah, step on a mine and you'll. It's a pretty dramatic step as well.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of sad, you can see in the background them taking the wounded off. Notice it's still very sympathetic towards the soldiers.
Yeah.
But he is starting to call a bit of the war into question. Is the life of any one of these young men worth it?
And I guess he's comparing the moonscape of Vietnam here to the moonscape of the moon as well.
That is so deep, sir.
Yeah.
Did you come up with that all by yourself? You must be in the English department.
Yeah, well, I've dabbled in English.
I was told to get lost from the English department, but that's all right.
Yeah, I think I was too. That's why I'm here with you.
No,
anyway.
Fails together.
That's right. Okay. We talked about conscription before, but this is a story worth telling, isn't it? Okay. William White, 1965. He is our first classic, conscience objector. He doesn't want to go to war. He's opposed the war, in terms of taking human life. He doesn't want to kill. He doesn't agree that he should be forced to serve in the military. And he is called up a number of times. And eventually, he's dragged out of his home by these big burly police officers here. Look at these guys.
Oh, check them out. They're the Queensland's finest.
Come with us, son. Look at this bloke here. Don't want to get into that. But
yeah. This is a classic example of how not to handle the anti-war movement. And remember, we've tried to say to you that you've got to see both sides of things. Rigby there you can see very much on the side of the soldiers, but also questioning the value of the war.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, this is when conscription was really starting. I think this is 1965.
You said 65 before. I'm on the thing, so I'm going to take it
I
as
didn't read
65.
it.
Yeah.
You must have read it.
Yeah, I'm very diligent. Yeah.
You are. You are an example to us all, sir.
Yes.
Anyway, there is White. Now he is absolutely ideal for the anti-war movement. Just look at him. I mean, he's so clean cut. He even wears white jeans, and he's got a lovely white T-shirt. And he's a wonderful person. He's a primary school teacher.
Primary school teacher?
He was, and so was his fiancée Claire.
Gee.
They were just lovely people. And suddenly they got a conscription notice. And I'm sorry, Bill's just not going to go along with that. He does not believe in killing. He doesn't even believe in supporting the war at all.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm not going to do it. And he says it a number of times. So they've sent along the police to drag him in, and he's going to go to court, and he's going to go through the whole process, and he'll probably spend a couple months in jail. But look at the picture, guys. I mean, you couldn't get a better poster for the anti-war movement.
So you'd see this in the paper, perhaps?
It was splashed right out in the middle of the paper,
Yeah.
and people just laughed out. I mean, the poor innocent little Bill White, dragged off by these. I mean, look at these cops dragging him off.
They're high goons, aren't they?
They look like Nazi Gestapo. I mean, look at number 2 with his. I mean, he's had way too many donuts, that fella.
I wasn't going to say it, okay?
Sorry.
You're a bit older, you can, I guess,
Yeah. I mean, look at the guy, the sergeant in charge of it there with his suit and so on, detective. I mean, talk about overkill. And look at these guys, the guys dragging him on. This is a young guy who could be, after his training, he might even elect to go to Vietnam, but would these fat policemen ever fight in Vietnam? Hell no.
Funny that you can't see their eyes also. They're like these faceless cops, aren't they? You know what I mean? He's their leader. It's a really good photo. So,
I mean, you can imagine how this would garner sympathy for the anti-war movement. And Bill White naturally just became a martyr. I mean, he was a Joan of Arc, a male, obviously. But you can understand why a lot of people, and particularly the SOS, would be looking. There's one of our sons that needs saving.
Yeah.
Poor Bill. We got to get behind that and give Bill his due. He actually did believe very strongly. He had strong religious convictions, and he intended to stand up for what he was going to say, and he did it. And really, you couldn't have picked 4 worse policemen to send to do this job. You can see the press is just having, notice the way that even the press, they're focusing on their fat faces and look at the way that poor Bill he's just being dragged off, held up by his friends.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a guy who said, no, I'm not going to go and kill somebody.
So before this, the anti-war movement was those letters and placards, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, those professional nobodies that no one really listens to. Now we've got this poster boy, this young, dynamic, I guess, man that stands up for what he believes in. He looks after little kids. He's a primary
How
school
Australian
teacher.
can you
He's a
be?
young couple. He's got his little white picket fence there as
Feeling
well.
patriotic already.
You know, and let's get behind this guy, okay?
Yeah,
All right?
absolutely.
If they can do it to him, what could they do to me?
I'd be sending off to Vietnam right now, son.
All right then. Okay, so there we go. And D makes his little stuff there about the martyrs. You can read that in your own time if you want to. But yeah, so no longer is the conscience objector, the wuss or the nutter or the shirker. It's the boy next door, sir.
Yes,
The boy
and he
next
could be marrying Claire, the girl next door, and
Yeah,
it's going to break up that romance. And
that's right.
I'm just,
It's a tragedy. It's not a tragedy.
it is
It's a tragedy.
utter disgusting. I'm appalled.
Well,
Absolutely appalled.
you changed my view. I suppose that's what turned you, isn't it, sir? Was Bill White turning you?
I've never even met him. Never called him.
All right, this will be a bit of fun. I'm going to be this blue Australia up here, and D-Mac, of course, he's the fiery red.
Oh,
Kids. Kids, listen. We used to have red hair back in the day. Can you hear me? Okay.
a ragger.
Having long locks.
A ragger.
Dr. McLellan. Are you part Scottish as well, sir?
Yeah. My ancestors fought alongside William Wallace, I'll have you know. We've been rebels for a long time.
Still a rebel, always a rebel. All right, let me go through this, okay?
Before we do that, basically what happens is, if you remember, we talked about polarization. Views start to spread apart and people just aren't listening anymore.
Yep.
And particularly the government is pretty tone deaf. So you've got 2 sides of Australia. You've got the conservative side, which is the blue, and then you've got the socialist, Australian
Labor side.
We're against the war.
Yeah. I guess back then politics was a little bit more distinct, wasn't it? So the Liberals were much more right and the Labor Party was much more left. Is that right?
Yeah, there was perhaps a little bit. People actually believed in what they said in those days, unlike what we got today. They had ideals.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's get into this, okay? I'll be your classic conservative and Dima can be the classic rebel, okay? The army needs to conscript some 8,000 to 12,000 troops annually to make up shortfalls in army numbers. The Australian Constitution enables the government to conscript men to defend Australia.
Yeah, but the Australian Constitution only allows for conscripted soldiers to serve in the defence of Australian territory. Australian territory is not being threatened. Vietnam is not Australian territory. Yeah.
The Liberal government has a policy of forward defence. If you hadn't noticed, we need to send our troops to fight in places like Korea, Malaya, Indonesia and Vietnam to defend Australia against the scourge of overseas communist aggression. By fighting them there, we'll be defending the streets of Sydney here.
Yeah, right. Forward defence. That doesn't even make any sense. How can you defend by attacking? That's just Liberal government jargon, and young Australian men should not have to die for a meaningless policy. No Australian should have to fight for an American imperialist war. It's undemocratic.
A majority in Parliament agree with the idea of forward defence and voted for the National Service Act. That allows the government to conscript troops. They also believe in supporting our allies in ANZUS. That's called democracy.
Oh, what's democratic about a bunch of overage fat politicians voting to send young 18 and 19-year-olds off to Vietnam to die? The voting age is 21. So teenagers are being killed for a war in which they do not even have a democratic voice.
Well, I think you'll find that the actual conscription age is 20, okay, not 19 or 18.
Oh, well, that makes a big difference. I was only 19, and they still can't vote. They are selected at random in a ballot of death.
Oh,
They get no choice. What happened to personal freedom?
Oh, sorry, I've skipped over too much there. The birthday ballot is perfectly fair on everyone. There are all kinds of exemptions, and besides, the national serviceman has to sign a paper to agree to serve in Vietnam in the first place.
So why are brave young men who refuse their call-up papers going to prison? Answer me that one. It's wrong to punish people who are following their conscience. It's un-Australian.
Bloody VC communist. Commie coward, pinko, long-haired, red.
It's imperial Yankee pig.
We might leave this confusing spiderweb for another one. What do you want to do today?
Confusing about it, but no, I'm exhausted myself dealing with your stupidity.
Well, nothing seems to get through to you anyway.
Yeah, you never listen anyway.
Okay. All right, we'll see.
Get to the bone, and I'm totally unappreciated.
We'll have one more of these episodes, and then
God.
Okay.
The end of Cheech and Chong.
End of Cheech and Chong for this year. All right, guys. See ya.